Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Good evening, Fade to Black. How you doing? Today's Tuesday. That's right. Tuesday, September 26th, 2023. Let's do this, man. I've been waiting for this show for a while. Tonight, Mike Herrera is with us, UFO Whistleblower. It's going to be an amazing conversation. So buckle up, kids, and stay tuned. We will have Mike on here in just a minute. I want to remind everybody to help support the show. Get your Fade to Black T-shirts. We have 2. Everything is autographed. Everything includes shipping. There are 2 ways to get them. The links are below. We do a lot of shows, and we have a big team of people here. So please help support us. It's not a one-man show. It'd be nice if it was. I don't have any spare time as it is. But anyway, help support the show. Get your Fade to Black T-shirts today. All right? Tonight on the show, Mike Herrera is with us. Oh, I was just thinking before the show, my day today, this was my day. This was domestic Jimmy Day. It was just kind of weird. I caught myself today. I vacuumed upstairs. I mopped the floors downstairs. I did 3 loads of laundry. I actually went to the mailbox too. I did that. And then I put nightstands in my guest bedrooms with lamps. And I did all, and I was just like, who have I turned into? Laundry, mopping floors. I took out the trash too, as well. I did that. I was just like, man, I want to do fun stuff. That was my day all the way up to sound check with Mike Herrera. As a matter of fact, when I did a sound check with Mike, I was taking out the trash. I came back and walked straight into the studio, and there he was, and we did a sound check. So that was my day today. How interesting is that? Not very. That's why I'm looking forward to tonight's conversation. Mike Herrera is with us, UFO Whistleblower. Tonight we're going to be discussing deep black organizations. We're going to be talking about reverse engineered craft, not of this earth, and what they are being used for. We're going to be talking about the links between technology and amplified human consciousness. We're going to be doing that as well. And we're going to talk about black projects and black teams, all that and much more. Tonight, we're going to get in depth with all of this. He is a Marine veteran. He owns a few different companies right now, including a private security contracting company. And, you know, he calls it, he's got a major heavy equipment company. Like, what is that? He's like, bulldozers. Oh, that kind of heavy equipment. And he's also, of course, a whistleblower advocate with the Disclosure Project. And I would like to welcome, for the first time, to Fade to Black, there he is. Get ready. Mike Herrera. There he is. Biceps and all, man. How you doing, brother?
Good. Just have to get a new shirt, of course, you know, thanks to sound check and doing all that. But as far as business-wise, it's been great. It's been busy. So, you know, getting into need items and things like that. I mean, until people can lift up 5,000 pounds by themselves, we're going to need a piece of equipment from me. So that's always great.
Yeah. You can lift 5,000 pounds by yourself. Yeah. So check this out. So I'm the most in shape human on planet Earth, right? I have a gym, Mike. When you come over to the house, and you know where I live, right?
Oh, yeah.
So when you come over, check out my gym, right? You're going to go, man, that's pretty sweet. How come you don't use it? But so I'm out to dinner with Mike last week, and your beautiful wife, by the way, she's really cool. And wife, girlfriend, you guys are married or not? See, with Mike, you gotta be you gotta be straight up, because I'm sitting next to Mike. He's right next to me, and he's got arms the size of telephone poles, and I'm not exaggerating about that. I'm sitting next to him like, man, there's nothing I can say about being fit sitting next to you. And the other thing is, I got to watch what I say. Do you get that a lot though? Because you are in shape. I was joking with you when we were at dinner. I was like, "You work out today, right?"
Oh yeah,
Even
I remember that.
Yeah, you should have punched me in the mouth right then, actually,
Oh.
for saying something. So, but anyway, you looked at me and you go, "Nope." But I did last night. So, but do you get that a lot? From an unfit guy to a fit guy. Do you know that people recognize, your size and that you're so in shape?
So back when I was competing in bodybuilding is a little bit different. Obviously, it was like a show pony, and that's basically what it was, is a glorified beauty pageant, and I'd spend 5 months preparing for stuff like that. So I'm used to that kind of attention. Now, here's the kicker to that. Everybody thinks, oh yeah, you get in shape like that, or you're going to prep for a show or become a bodybuilder. Oh yeah, you're going to get all the ladies. First of all, ladies do not like that look. And that's very true, because you're all veined out. You look vascular. You got deep cuts in your abs, things like that. Women
Yeah, I
don't
know.
like
I know the problem. Yeah.
But you get male attention, and they're like, oh man, how do you get in shape? How do you do this? How do you do that? So anybody going into that, first of all, we're not going to get women's attention. You're going to get male attention, and sometimes you're going to get the other kind of male attention, if you know what I mean. So just juggle your risks here, but
Okay. Yeah. I hadn't quite approached it from that angle, but I'm picking up what you're putting down.
there you go.
Now, let's actually start here. Okay, I'm going to start here. I'm going to start with, why now? Why are you coming forward now? Is it the Gillibrand Amendment and the NDAA and the public announcements about whistleblower protection in this field, when we're talking about alien technology and UFOs and ET and all of that stuff? Was it that, or was there something else that motivated you?
So it was basically what you just listed. And the reason being is because being under a non-disclosure agreement, I mean, with what I was able to witness back in 2009, the kind of technology that they had, the kind of force, brutality, I mean, even though it wasn't lethal, so to speak, but to a regular person who wasn't in the military, that's going to scar them, because it did for me. So when they had passed a law a few days before Christmas of last year, making it possible for us to come forward without being prosecuted, I mean, who knows? I mean, with what I know today, I'm glad that I took this route, because it was a safer passage compared to people who think they can handle this on their own. There's a reason why Grusch went the way he did. There's a reason why a fellow other whistleblowers went the way they did, because of that reason. It grants protection, because you're going to ultimately the people who are going to want to know the information first and foremost, but they're going to make sure that you're secured in the proper way and the best ways possible, at least at that time.
Now, I was making reference to your physicality, your size at the beginning of the show, and I did that for a reason. You would think that, and Grusch, I can say this about too as well. He's a big guy, and one would assume, Marine and intelligence and being a part of the military, that you're not intimidated, or that you would have a lot less fear than somebody, like me in my position. But that simply isn't the case, is it? You have all the same fears and threats that anybody else would have to deal with, and then you throw in aliens and ET and corporations that want to protect their black projects and profit line. That it is a concern, right? Am I stating that correctly?
Yes, you are. I mean, I'm human at the end of the day. I mean, I put my pants on the same way. I've got fears. I mean, that's the reason why there's safeguards in place for this specific reason. So when people think, there's a stigma about Marines, it's like almost kind of like a cult type of stigma, if you will. So there's a lot of Marines I know who are afraid of things, especially the guys who were with me. I mean, they're still terrified to this day, and they're still terrified the fact that I came out. So a lot of because I did what I did, they found out publicly because obviously I'm being shared all over the internet. They're like, no, 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 stay far away from me because I don't want to be associated with what you're doing. I'm not going to talk to anybody on your behalf. They got families, which I understand. I mean, I've had two Marines since then who have not really came out publicly, but they are enough to at least send messages to say, "Hey, forward this to the right people," so that way they know that this is 100% true. So, 100% being afraid because what is the saying that Mike Tyson had? Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. Well, that day was almost like getting punched in the face, and even, combat, things like that. I mean, this is something that is so out of the norm. It's so spooky. The fact that you have an unknown element that's there that has weapons in your face, that is being very aggressive. You're not going to want to do anything because your first instinct is, yeah, I want to get home alive. And that was my concern. And I'm sure it was all of our concerns at that point because again, it was just so it was very ambiguous of what could have happened, and to this day, I'm still thankful it happened the way that it did. And I thought about it for 14 years almost. I mean, this month, as a matter of fact, or next month, I should say, would be 14 years. So with the safeguards in place, not only that, but doing things personally to help with that, I feel a lot better. But is there a risk? There's a risk to anything these days. There's a risk to driving your car and getting on a car accident on a highway. Somebody could be drunk. I mean, it's just every single day you step out of your door, you're going to take risks.
Um, I took a risk earlier tonight. Now we're gonna laugh. Normally, with the first time a first time guest, I for tradition, I've been doing this for 10 years. I have a first time guest disclaimer. So excited about having you here tonight, I forgot about it, and I've only forgotten to do the disclaimer a handful of times out of 2,000 shows. So let me back up so I don't get punched in the throat next time I see you. Mike, this is just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where that conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends. But we're going to end as friends. Difference being we're already friends,
Right.
but we will continue to be friends. So there it is, the first time guest disclaimer, but you have to accept.
I always accept it.
Okay.
I think you kind of gave me a warning when we had dinner the other night, so that
Yeah,
was
yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough. Now, will there? Are you aware of other whistleblowers? Not only people that no, I shouldn't say whistleblowers. Other individuals that you have worked with that that have reached out to you that are also about to come forward under the same protections.
no, as a matter of fact.
Why?
Um,
Really? Why?
yeah. Well, I mean, I have provided my email, which I mean, people can Google search me and find up, information or whatever. But at the same time, I mean, there's certain people I've had to reach out to me, but it wasn't in the sense of what I blew the whistle on. Um, I've had numerous people reach out thinking, okay, what they saw. So you kind of dissect what they may have saw. You kind of keep record of it. You're sure I pass their information around, but it's ultimately up to whoever in the Senate Intelligence Committee, or at least the contacts I have in DC, whatever they feel to be strongly about, and if they feel that it's a need for them to come forward to them in that sense and not publicly. So I've had people talking about corrupt government officials in their local cities, corrupt police departments, corrupt governors. I mean, I've had any sort of numerous people reach out to me through LinkedIn explaining that. But the thing is I'm a whistleblower for the UFO UAP subject. I'm not a whistleblower for corruption in the government side of things like that, even though what I do and what I've been doing ties into that to a degree, not nearly like the political side of it. But so people kind of got confused, like, okay, well, the government wants to know all of this stuff. No, this only pertains to the UFO UAP subject. So as far as that goes, I've had a gentleman reach out to me that was stationed in Iraq. He was actually at a fob and he saw something right above him in pitch black, dark of night. Didn't make any sound like a helicopter, didn't produce any rotor wash. However, it did fire a weapon. So he was kind of concerned about that. So he actually reached out to me and tried to get more clarification. I reached out to some of my contacts, including Dr. Greer, and I said, "Have you ever heard of anything like this?" And he says, "Oh, absolutely. Some people have heard." So the beautiful thing about what we're doing is if people are paying attention, these are all connecting the dots. There's other people's testimonies and stories on this side. Here's mine. Here's other people's. But what it's doing is it's bridging and closing that gap. And that's why the government decided to start taking this very serious because now they started connecting the dots on certain aspects. There's still things out there that they can't wrap their heads around. People have to understand that these politicians, they have egos because they are in their mind have power. But when you're telling them that they don't have power because there's organizations out there that have way more advanced technologies than they've got, that can pretty much do whatever they want without even, they don't follow the law to begin with. So the power that senators, politicians, all that kind of stuff, the only power they've got is within the law, the rule of law itself. But if these people don't follow that, they don't play that game, then they're not players. So they're doing their own thing with their own game. And that's kind of a revelation that they're coming across in their minds to say there's a real serious problem because now they're essentially decapitated. The government itself is decapitated in that way because they have things that they don't know that they have no control over that now they're learning about. And the worst part of it is that they've had a 70 to 80-year head start on the government official side of it. And they prepared for things like this. It's not like they didn't have anything in place to say, okay, if people start looking into this, they can just push a button, signal somebody, give a phone call, you name it, and they can shut it down pretty quick if they want to. So they're kind of, it's like four-dimensional chess. That's the only way I can describe it.
The other part about this, if we think about it, like Aaron Brockovich or other whistleblowers in very sensitive areas. I'm talking about money making, large corporations, government contracts, and all of those things. Those whistleblowers are rare. Now, when you think about something like I'm specifically talking about Aaron Brockovich here, but there was this fear of people around her that also could have stepped forward and been an official whistleblower. But nobody wants to take that chance. They want to be the status quo, and they just want to just go down life's path. I understand that choice. I really do. But when we get into UFOs and ET and contact and flying saucers and reverse engineered and alien bodies and now we are into a really sensitive area. And I totally get it. And that's why with you coming forward, I have to ask those questions. Why now? And are you aware of the dangers involved?
I am aware of the dangers involved. I've had helicopters hovering over my house. I've had helicopters intimidating my dad. As a matter of fact, one time I was talking to him on the phone, and sure as shit, you hear a helicopter flying over his house. Ask him, "What's that noise?" And he literally looked at it and he described it. And literally 10 minutes later, I'm sitting there in traffic waiting to go to the gym after work, and that same helicopter flies right over my car. So it's not coincidence at that point. They like to try to intimidate, try to scare you. So some contacts of mine in this deep organization who wish they could come forward had told me what to specifically look for, who told me what type of applications to download to actually track these aircraft. And if they don't squawk, so to speak, then it's a ghost ship. So they have briefed me on certain things that I could expect, certain things that I should expect, and more along the lines. I mean, I'm pretty safe because I do have a team of guys that at a moment's notice, I mean, they're always checking in on me. I mean, they're well armed. Some of these guys are former special operations, former and active law enforcement. So I have I have a pretty good standby system for things like that. And granted, it's still a risk. Granted, anything could happen. But here's the thing: I'm tired of things not being done. And the only way that stuff gets done is when you start to change the tide, or you start to start to muddy the water, so to speak, and you start getting people's attention. And hopefully, with what I've been doing, hopefully it gets other people to come forward who may have had more serious things that they have witnessed or they were able to partake in that are much deeper than what I'm exposing, and hopefully they can do it the safe way and actually get some progress with this and actually do something that's going to pretty much, and there's no other and better way to say this, but save the world, because essentially that's what we're talking about.
Now let's take a deep dive here into your first encounter. You set the stage. You're in the Marines.
Correct.
The location was where?
Indonesia, Padang City, which is on the far western side. So I was with the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. I was attached to USS Denver, which, by the way, I tried to look up the ship. They actually sunk the ship when they decommissioned it. So the ship
Okay.
no longer exists, but at the time it was an LPD, which is like a landing platform dock. So I was a part of what you would call a track company, which it's amphibious assault vehicles that they put in the well deck. You do amphibious raids. So it's quote unquote what civilians and people who are not a part of something like that, they think it's high speed. It's literally just a fancy piece of equipment you get to fall asleep in until they start telling you how close you are, unless you're on air watch. So
Did you train at Camp Pendleton?
that's where I was stationed, correct?
Yeah, I've watched the landing exercises there with that is one of the craziest things to witness.
Oh yeah,
Those landing ships and the hovercraft coming off of them, and the storm, 5 freeway as you're driving south. If there's training there, I mean, it's Camp Pendleton.
oh yeah. You're
And
probably
on a lucky day, you can see something like that go down, and it's very serious business. So you were part of something similar to that, right?
correct. Yep. Yes, that's correct. So now originally there was a typhoon that had swept through the Philippines, did a lot of damage. So Seventh Fleet was tasked to go provide humanitarian assistance to that region. At the same time, there was a tsunami and earthquake that happened off the western coast of Indonesia, the far western side, and there's a city called Padang. If that's how you pronounce it. It's Padang. At that time, it wasn't as developed as what recent satellite imagery. I've checked it. I've had the Pentagon look into this because I myself, I don't know exactly the coordinates that we landed. I'm just a occupant on the CH-53 at that time. I don't have any briefing materials like maps. That's much higher up on the echelon compared to what I was doing. So we were the only ship that was routed to that part out of the Seventh Fleet, and they have numerous, probably 5, 6 ships in that fleet plus ours. So we routed up to that part, sat and docked for probably about maybe a day, decided to plan operations, and then we ended up taking helos, CH-53s in to get to the remote parts of what I'm estimating is the north part of the city. Because the only reason why I'm saying this is because the direction of the ocean was obviously west. So I was sitting in the back of this helo looking at it, and I had a camera with me, so I'm taking video of this because you don't get to do this normally. So it's something that's just out of the norm, but it's just good to have memories of and say, you know what, I got to help people, But the I guess the gut buster here is what we stumbled across, you know. So We ended up hitting an LZ. It was a hasty LZ, so it's nothing planned. They just kind of it was an empty space, was big enough to land a helo. We egressed out of it, and we had 5 other Marines with me, which is typically not a normal way that we would do things, and especially because it's humanitarian assistance. Usually, if you're doing combat missions, you're with a full squad of 12 Marines. 13 if you got a squad leader. So this was not normal by any means. They basically hand selected people who, either with seniority or whatever it was, that said, "Hey, you're going to go ahead and go onto this stick. You're going to go onto this stick." So you weren't even really with any of the people most of the time that you normally would be with. So a couple of my buddies I was with, at least 2 of them, then we still kind of talk to this day. We don't talk about what happened, of course, and I don't blame them, but at least until after they saw a few interviews I've done, then they decided to ask a little bit about it, but then they're like, no. So we got off the bird. Now, tactically speaking, the best observation post you could ever have is to be elevated and be up in an elevated position. So we pushed to an elevated position. When we pushed out to elevated position, we could see, the helos weren't flying very high. They were flying pretty much very low map of the earth, if you would call it that. And they would land hastily and they would drop off and they would bank off and either go to a ship or wherever they were going to get supplies. I have no idea where they were going for that. Um, we end up looking north and there's like a slope that goes down. And it's, of course, it's vegetation and there's like this, you can see through it. Some of it's kind of very thick and there's more towards, our right side. So as you're going in, this was kind of more left side was a little bit, but not as bad as the right side. And we just see this thing that's just sitting there, and it was like a sore thumb because it was changing colors, especially in an environment where you have greens of vegetation. It kind of looked, we thought, okay, maybe that's a weird building, whatever it was, but then you see it rotating clockwise. So that part registered that this was abnormal, right? So we're all looking at each other like, what the hell is this thing? So we decided to get into a tap column and go take a look. So as we were pushing down this slope, we're watching our step because you don't want to fall, you don't want to trip or knock over your Marines or anything like that. You don't want to get hurt. And we had some M16A4s. Every single one of us had that. We've had 180 rounds. So we had 6 magazines total. We had 1 loaded up, but we weren't condition 1, obviously, because it was more the appearance of security, and the reason being is because Indonesia is the second largest terrorist capital in the world. And
Okay.
every time there's a natural disaster that happens, these guys, these rebels, insurgents, whatever you would call them, try to occupy that area. They try to maim, harass, intimidate, kidnap, murder. They try to cause havoc in that part. So we were the security presence basically to prevent things like that from happening. And the local police there end up taking a lot of the firefights for us because they were off at a distance and we didn't hear about this until after we left, of course. But as we were going down an attack column, we start to see this, and it's a craft. It's got the shape of a UFO. It's a flat bottom and it has like a pyramid structure, and you can count the edges, which is like an octagonal shape because you could see the edges start to rotate. And there was this platform underneath of it. And so we got close enough to where we could kind of see what, the paneling on this thing. It wasn't like a smooth, silver disc or anything like that. It was very like, the only way I can say it was like scales, like octagonal shapes that were locked into each other. And this whole thing is changing colors from a light matte gray to a dark matte black. And it just keeps like very smooth. That's just like the transition of colors. So when we got close enough, all of a sudden, from our left point of view and our right point of view, there's 4 on each side that were dressed up in this black tactical gear. They had M4s. They had M4A1s, if you will, or FM15s. I said originally on some shows those M4A4s. I'm not a weapons expert to a degree because M16A4s have a quad rail. These were M4s that had a quad rail on them. They had a PEC 16. They had a ACOG. We had an RCO, which was a step below that, and then we had a PEC 15, which was for IR, night missions, night fire exercises, things like that. And these guys had a step up of everything. Of course, their weapons are pristine looking. They had black OTV vests. They had black camouflage utilities. They had ball caps. They had sidearms like drop holsters with it looked like H&K and SIGs. I mean, they enveloped us in a way that here's us, and then here's like the sides of them, and here's the angle of fire they got. Right. So these guys knew.
Did you say baseball caps?
Yep, hats. They didn't have Kevlar helmets. They had caps.
That would scare the crap out of me,
Yeah.
right? You coming at, I mean, don't care, man. I'm wearing a baseball cap. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay. So, did you guys communicate at that point
They
with
yelled at
them?
us. They yelled at us. They asked us what the hell we were doing there. They started screaming at us. They're Russian. They're in like a stance where they're kind of like light-footed with their weapon in their shoulder, and they're looking right at us with their muzzles. And all four of them, they're evenly spaced, of course, but they're funneling us like this. It's like called a nosebleed. And they it's kind of the same thing what we would do if we're coming up onto people who are not suspecting anything because you're throwing them off. It's almost like a police are doing a raid in a house. They go in there, they start screaming, they're getting you stressed out so you don't have time to react. You're trying to figure out what's going on and process this. Well, I mean, to their avail, it worked because we have this big ass craft in the back that's rotating that you don't ever see. At that point, I didn't believe in any of that stuff. I didn't think that stuff was real. I had, saw TV shows talking about UFO encounters. I'm like, okay, this is just bull crap. But here's this thing I'm looking at, and I've got these operators, if you will, that are, sighted in on us, screaming at us, they're going to kill us. They're pretty aggressive. It's intimidating, especially for Marines. We're kind of used to training to a degree, and you see these guys, and these guys got their shit together.
Mhm.
It's something that kind of throws you to like a whirlwind, so to speak. Of course, so as they're holding us up, they're positioning themselves to where they have guys standing off to the side that have fields of fire that are on some of the guys that they're not searching. And they're taking our magazines out of our pouches, throw them onto the ground. They're kicking them away from us, so they're kind of outside standoff range. So you can't run over, try to grab one up. They take our weapons, and the way that they cleared them, so they had their hand over the ejection port, and then they just went like this and popped, obviously trying to check it because they dumped the mag. And of course, nothing came out because we were in condition one, which means that you have a round chambered, you have bolt forward, safety on, magazine inserted, injection port cover closed. You don't have any of that. So they're kind of looking at us like, oh, you guys aren't really prepared for this. Well, yeah, nobody's prepared for something like that. And that was at that time, it's like, okay, shit's getting real now.
Mhm.
I thought we were going to die. All of us thought that, so they're taking our stuff out, disarming us. They're being rough about it. They're not being like, peaceful, like, okay, let me take this off you. Like they're ripping stuff out of your arms. They knew our, policies, if you will. We kept our military IDs in or our cat cards in our left breast pocket. So they took them out. They're looking at our names. They had like these, kind of look like a smartphone like this, taking pictures of them. It may have been a phone. I had a Sony Ericsson phone at that time that had a flip phone that had an MP3, and that was like the thing back in the day besides BlackBerry. And they got something that looks a little bit more sleek than that. And they had some other device that kind of remind me of like a BAT system, where it's like a biometrics tracking system that we were trained up on how to identify people, and you kind of book them in, if you will. You take their biometric data, like their fingerprints, retinal scans, photo ID, and they're trying to do this with our military IDs. And obviously, they end up finding out who we were with. They found out everything about us.
Now, let me understand something. So you've got a craft
Hmm.
in the background. These guys are now in between you and the craft and have you surrounded. You're the United States Marines. You're the Marine Corps. How does another expeditionary force, I don't know how to describe them, come in and intimidate the Marines and take charge of the situation?
Well,
You are the security patrol, and now
right.
you have another security patrol overtaking you.
Right.
Who were they? Did they identify themselves? They're taking ID from you.
Hmm.
What? Help me understand the situation.
Well, they had to drop on us first. Let's say if you get pulled over by a police officer, because this is the most common thing people have experienced too, and if they end up moving a certain way or make a police officer uncomfortable and the officer happens to draw a sidearm, I mean, are you going to do anything to chance him to shoot you? And it's just a traffic stop. It's not something really worth taking a bullet for. So there's people where they've had that happen to them where they've been held at gunpoint, by a cop because a cop's either uneasy, whatever it might be. They had to drop on us first, and that's the rule of it. I mean, it's not like Hollywood. Everybody thinks like, oh yeah, you start
Right, right.
contact and everything. You magically turn into John Wick. I mean, that's unrealistic. It's Hollywood. It sells. That's the whole point of movies like that. We had no cover in that jungle where we could have ran to. By the way, because it's open in that area. If we were to have ran, they probably would have gunned us down. They've already had their weapons sighted in on us. They could easily
Right.
have killed us. They're also where we were at when we were coming down the hill. They could have wait till we got down and they could have opened fire. It'd have been the end of it. You would never heard of you would have heard of some incident that happened. However, they would have spun that story. But I've thought about this for years. I've thought about why, and I've asked some of them that are in this organization, at least the good guys that are a part of this organization. Now I know who they are. And soon,
Okay, okay. Let's stay right there for a second.
right. So
At the time would you assume that these were private contractors or
yeah.
that this was a branch of the military that you didn't know about?
Well, at the time, President Obama had some family members that were in that region. So we had a SEAL platoon that was on our ship. We could have thought, normally I know SEALs don't normally rock out in, black tactical gear because it really doesn't provide any kind of tactical, um, you know,
Camouflage.
yeah, I mean, especially at jungle, I mean, it sticks out, and these guys
Right, right,
obviously
right,
don't want
right.
to be identified because typically you identify friendly or enemy forces by the uniforms that they wear because you know what they're wearing and you've learned about it. It's so ambiguous. You don't know who they are, or they're wearing all
Right.
black. I mean, it could have been anybody. It could have been, the way that they were talking to us was American dialects, how you and I are talking. They're
What about patches or insignias or identifying?
no rank,
Nothing.
no insignia, no emblems, nothing that would signify anything. It was completely, it was even to the point to where their gear didn't even have, because sometimes you have a manufacturer logo on some of the gear that you wear. They didn't have anything like that. So it was,
Strange. The
yeah,
real the real men in black, I might add. Okay.
mhm.
Let's what was the craft doing while all of this is going on? Is it rising? Is it landing? Is it still moving? And
So
and how far away were you and this other group from the craft?
we were about 150 feet.
Half a
I mean,
football field. Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
we're that close because I mean it was massive, and judging the distance of how big it was, we were flying around in CH-53s. Those are 100 feet, 9,900 feet give or take, from nose to tail, right? So you could fit three of these things underneath that craft. So it's massive in comparison to that. So when you're looking at this, it's rotating. Mind you, when it's floating, it's still, but it's rotating. It's not bobbing up and down. It's not doing anything like that. It's just completely still hovering, but spinning. It's almost like it's on something, just rotating, but there's like a, 15, 20-foot gap between the bottom of the ship and the ground of this platform, you know. So as that's going on, we're of course have these guys that are standoff distance with their muzzles at you, and you're still paying attention to what's going on with them, but then you're happening to see what the hell's going on behind them. And it wasn't like they were behind us and kind of like, if we're right here, they're like sandwiching us. It was nothing like that. It's like we're right here and they're spread out here making sure that if they had to open fire, they could hit and kill all of us. If they had us grouped together enough in that sense. So as that's going on, all of a sudden we start seeing trucks come out and it starts coming from the left. They're driving right at us. And then they turned around and they banked towards that craft. And these trucks were F-350s. I mean, is what they look like. They were black. They had when they were driving towards us, you can see that they had the headlights, but then they had these other lights on the front of it that were very similar to what Hummers or Humvees would have. So you can actually have IR lights at nighttime and you can drive with your night vision. They had that set up on those trucks. It had some beefy tires to it. They were quiet compared to normal F-350 diesel. They had these weapon cases, like these Pelican cases, in the back of the truck beds. And then they had this trailer that was pulling these containers that had a HVAC system on top of the roof, but closer towards the front of the truck. And
Okay. How many pickup trucks and how many? I think you're describing like a tractor trailer, like a semi.
I mean, not nearly that big. It's just a trailer that you would haul a container with. I mean, it looked like sometimes when a Humvee would pull, because sometimes they have attachments that they'll pull, at least, military Humvees that have like a tarp over it and all that. So that's what this kind of looked like, but it had like a container that looked like a shipping container, but it had this HVAC. So
HVAC being air conditioning, heating, and cooling.
yeah. I mean, when this first came, to realization, I had thought it was drugs because you don't see, I mean, especially in the heavy equipment industry, you get to, you have clients that you have to help with container loaders and things like that. And still to this day, I've never had any of them tell me that they've ever worked with, containers that have HVAC. Now they've shown me things that were similar to a degree that were inside the container that didn't have anything protruding on the top or on the sides or anything like that. It's all inside the container. This was protruding out. So I counted 4 trucks that were coming out like this.
4 of the HVAC trucks.
Yes, trucks with those containers.
So this is a convoy. How many pickup trucks?
4.
4. So it was 8 total?
No, so it's 4 trucks pulling these containers.
Oh, I got you.
Yes.
Okay. Now let's back up. I thought that the pickup trucks were like escorting these other. No, so you're saying it was 4 big Super Duty Ford F-350 type pickup trucks that were towing a container that had an HVAC system, something that appeared to be an HVAC system on its roof.
Correct, and more towards the front of the truck. Yeah, so that's I counted 4 of those. So the other thing that what we had 8 guys on us, right, that were aiming their weapons at us, intimidating us, telling us they're going to kill us. They kept asking each other, "Hey, what should we do with these guys? Should we just smoke them right now?" Like they were saying some pretty messed up stuff, and it's like at the time, I mean, there's no better way to put it. You're shitting your pants because you have
Right.
something you have no idea what's going on. You're literally trying to think of all of this. Like, how does this make any sense? And you're telling yourself this, how the hell does this make any sense? So you're seeing these trucks, they go into this platform. And as this is going on, you're going back and forth between. So I didn't see exactly how they unloaded this stuff. And I didn't see how the trucks were egressing off this platform. But at one point, I did see all 4 doors open up on one of the trucks, and there's 4 guys that came out of the truck. So you have 8 guys here, and you have more that are potentially there. I mean, and compared to a 6-man team going up against potentially a platoon size element of probably 30 plus operators, if that is the case. But here's the thing: you're not only that tactically outgunned with them and with tactics, because they already had the drop on us. They also outnumber us. Not only that, but you see the piece of technology just sitting right there that they're having to deal with. They got you outgunned technology wise, So it's something that's unsettling because you're caught between a rock and a hard place, And thinking about it now, it's like I'm thankful it happened the way that it did because if anything would have happened, these guys have the ability to do whatever they want. They don't
Yeah,
protect.
you're not on the show tonight.
Yeah.
That's the point here. Okay. So now, what is going through your mind? It has to be what's going through my mind right now. Like, what the heck is that?
Yep.
Who are these guys?
Yep.
Are they working with this? Is this craft theirs?
Yeah.
Is that ET, visiting, or is that craft ours? And we have stuff that they didn't teach us at Camp Pendleton in our inventory. What's going through your mind, because all of this has to be rapid fire
It is.
confusion in your head.
It is. I mean, number one is fear. It's fear of the unknown of what's going on. I mean, it's unknown who these guys were. I mean, the craft especially. I mean, yeah, I mean, like I said, you see this stuff in movies and you're thinking like, okay, that's just a load of crap. But here it is you're staring at this thing off at a distance with this situation going on. And I think the fear was more like of the unknown of yeah, they could just decide to open up and kill all of us within, like that, and just, shoot us. So that was kind of more the number one thing. Just like what the hell is that craft? I mean, that was kind of the second thing besides the obvious of having guns pointed at you.
Mhm.
But it was fear. It was 100% fear. It was. I'll never forget it. I will never forget it. I had nightmares of stuff like this when it first happened because I couldn't tell anybody about it. I didn't want to tell, because let's say you're out somewhere. Let's say you're out here in Colorado. You're out hiking somewhere and you have a UFO that just lands right there in an open area, and they start having this paramilitary organization unload stuff, and you're like, "Oh crap, okay, well they didn't see me." But you try to go call the police, you try to call the FBI or federal agency, military, you name it. Are they going to believe you that you stumbled across something like this and try to report it? They're not going to believe you at all. It sounds so outrageous, But knowing what I know now, that's how they operate. They made a specific example of one of the first supersonic aircraft that was developed. It's still, when they parked it outside, it had a prop on the front, right? Well, they could push a button and it would recede in, and they had the test pilot would wear a gorilla mask. And so if he was landing at a part of a base or some other installation and some other pilot or some military personnel would have seen this guy, oh, here's a new aircraft that they came out with that obviously they didn't know at the time we had, jet propulsion like the Nazis did in World War II at the end of that. And you have somebody who looks like a gorilla flying a damn plane. It's so outrageous. So if you report that, nobody's going to take you serious. And that's how they operated. Even these top secret projects that are so gray projects or even black projects, they still operate with stuff like that. It's to throw people off. They don't want people to knowing what's going on. And if you do happen to tell somebody about it, well, you're going to discredit yourself by telling the truth. That's how they expertly work.
Now, this platform that you're referring to, was this a permanent installation in the jungle that this craft was landing on? Was it something separate? Was it temporary? What's your best guess at that moment?
Well, at that moment, you didn't know what it was. I mean, it just looked like a platform. But as
Was it the same shape as the craft?
mhm. So
Okay.
after we saw the last truck get on, or it could have been, there could have been multiple trucks, but we're focusing our attention on obviously what's in front of us and obviously what's going behind us. So after they got done doing whatever they were doing, all of a sudden you just see the bottom part raise up off the ground like this, the top part just, and it just literally covers the whole thing into one solid piece. Like it went underneath and hooked under the actual top part. And then it rose up past a little bit past the tree lines. I mean, there's no change in pitch. I mean, it sounded like a transformer, something on that kind of level. And it wasn't changing frequency or changing the pitch of the noise or nothing. It was just always constant. It was just coming up, and it cleared the tree line enough that as soon as it did, it shot off very fast off to the left towards the ocean. And it was, several thousand miles an hour. The exact speed, I have no idea, but it looked like a blur with how fast it went, and I've never seen anything fly that fast. It was the fastest thing I've ever seen in my life. So you never forget that. The most interesting thing about it is because of the vegetation, you could see coconuts on these trees. You don't see any rotor wash, exhaust wash that would normally blow stuff like that because of the velocity that that thing's traveling. And it did nothing. It disturbed absolutely nothing on those trees. It was creepy. It was very eerie. So you see this thing take off and you're kind of like snapping back into reality as these guys still except they're off to my right now, and they still have these guys that are looking over, with their weapons at us. All of a sudden, reality starts to hit you like, oh crap, actually, we're still dealing with this, not that. So
So what happens next? Oh, by the way, last week, right after I was with you, um, I went to, I don't want to say exactly where, but I was at a private airport, right?
mhm.
And I come out, I don't want to say any more than that, but I'm alone. And I walk around the corner, and right in front of me, I'll send you the pictures, and maybe you saw the videos or whatever. Anyway, 4 Marine Ospreys sitting there. And I walk right up to them, and I'm talking to the flight crews. I'm like, holy crap, 4 Ospreys. You see them flying, right? But to see them down on the ground. Well, anyway, I got to watch them take off. And watch. Okay, so the props on those things are not what you think. They are ginormous, right? I don't know how many feet across, but you're talking about 30, 40 feet of prop, right?
Right. Oh,
They're
yeah.
big blades. Anyway, these things fire up, and it's 20 feet from me. 20. I'm standing right there, and the wind, the noise, the dust, the dirt, the debris, the stuff that is blowing around, it's insanity. And that reminds me of your point, right, that you're making right now. This thing takes off and goes whoosh, but there was nothing. The amount of calamity caused from these 4 Ospreys, dude,
Oh, yeah.
everything was shaking. Everything was blowing. But
Oh, yeah.
that didn't happen when this craft took off.
No, not at all. And being used to have flown on CH-53s, I mean, they have a giant fan blade. They have pretty big rotors, if you will, or propeller. Excuse me. So there's been times where we egressed the helicopter from the rear, and you get into a 360 around to, basically put security around so the helicopter can leave, and Marines have a 360-degree avenue of security. And there's
Mhm.
times where I was at the nose of this aircraft, very front of it, and this thing literally just takes off and it goes forward. And that fan blade generated so much lift or thrust, if you will, that literally blew blew myself and a couple other guys off of our feet and onto our backs.
Yeah, it was like that with me
Yeah,
last week. I was leaning into this thing, man, like hurricane
yeah.
force. And I'm trying to video and keep the cat. It was like nearly impossible.
Oh yeah.
Now, okay, so before we're gonna head to a break in a few minutes, I want to get this in. So it's gone,
Yep.
but you still have the team there. You've got the
Correct.
trucks. You've got the 4 dudes in each truck. That's 16. You've got the other guys that are out in front of you, and there's 5 of you, I think you said. You've still got to deal with this situation on the ground. What happened?
So the trucks were not there. I don't know where they went, but when they went on this platform, I mean, obviously I didn't see them leave because of what was going on in front of us with these guys. So there's still 8 guys there after this thing leaves. And maybe the trucks went on this platform and stayed there, and this thing
Mm.
went together. I don't know how that worked because I mean I didn't see everything like that. So these guys tell us to turn around, and at that moment I was like, "What the hell? I mean, this is it." They're gonna tell us to turn around. They're gonna pop us in the back of the head. And so, I start trembling, of course. I could still feel my face getting really hot and the sweat off my palms inside my gloves. I mean, you could just feel like you got swimming pools in your fingers because of how much, stressful this is. It's,
Sure.
and it's already hot as crap out in Indonesia. It's a tropical situation with very, very high humidity. So you have that on top of this aspect. I mean, it was not a fun time per se. So they tell us to turn around, and at that moment, and this was where it kind of like thankful at the same time I saw like a weapon sling come over my head like this, and I thought they were gonna like choke us, strangle us with this weapon sling, because it's easy to do, and especially if you got somebody who's putting their whole weight into it, and you got armed guys. I mean, you're not gonna put up a fight because they'll just shoot you. So there's these scenarios playing in my head like, oh, they're gonna strangle us with this, but no, they end up slinging our weapon on our back, and they tightened the sling so tight to where you couldn't even, you couldn't even get the weapon off yourself. They actually, as they were doing it, ended up going into my neck protector. Um, the sling actually ended up cutting my neck right here. So they weren't very smooth about it. And then they put our magazines in our vest in a way because normally you have brass to the grass, is what we say. So you have the rounds down. So you grab it like this and you pop it straight up into your weapon, right? So it's just smooth motion like this. When you have brass to the sky, you're having to pull it out and you're having to get, adjust your hand to get like a low beer can grab, so to speak, to try to put in your weapon. So you can still do it. It's going to buy you some more time. So if you were trying to do this and take your weapon off, load it up and try to, fight these guys, they've already got
So they knew what they were doing.
100%. They knew what
Well, 100%. And did they just tell you to walk away?
they told us to go start walking up the hill.
Right.
And we did.
Did you turn around and look? Or did you guys just,
They told us not
just
They told us not to look back. They kept
right,
saying, "If you
right.
keep looking back, we'll shoot you. We'll kill you. We'll, they're saying worse stuff than that. They were saying, pretty much what psychopathic, murderers would try to say to people. I mean, this is exactly what they're reminding me of. So of course I'm not going to chance looking back. I mean, as much as you're curious, but there's a saying goes, curiosity kills a cat. This is a perfect example of how that could have turned into that degree. If we saw this thing, never investigated, just turn around, and I mean, nothing would have happened. We just say, okay, we saw something weird, but that's the extent of it. We didn't go into depth of how this actually turned out. It could have been the other way around where we just, okay, well, we turned back, went back to where we were going, and that's it. But unfortunately, we had to investigate. We were curious about it. We had no comms, by the way. I had a lot of flack from people telling me, especially Marines or Army, but it goes both sides because I've had Marines and Army guys, anybody who's been on patrols and things like that, has said there's been numerous times where they went without comms. And most of the time, I mean, Marine Corps is known for having hand-me-downs from the Army. Gear-wise, your gear doesn't always work as it should. So this is where your training comes into play because if you know how to train and use your gear expertly without communications, that's why you got hand and arm signals. That's why you got different other means of communication because if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Those radios will stop working. It could break. I mean, there's number of things that could happen. But if you have the basics such as hand and arm signals, and stuff how to utilize your weapons, even if something malfunctions, you know how to clear that. So we had no comms. So that was the thing is, I throughout the years, I was thinking like, what happens if we did have comms and we called this in and they had a helo fly? What would have happened to that? I mean, there's so many different ways that this could have went about it, but ultimately, I am a firm believer that things do happen for a reason. Because it's sure as hell played out that way, especially after this event and just throughout numerous events in my life that would, there's an understanding to it, and I don't know if it's just me trying to put purpose behind things because it's typically what humans do. People always try to put purpose into things to more provide an understanding. So we end up breaking the hill or the slope, and then we hightailed it thing, back to the LZ. And there was a gunnery sergeant who was attached to the ship. Or he might not have been attached to the ship. I don't know exactly who it was. That's just my assumption. But he was asking why the hell we came back, and he wasn't very nice about it, obviously, because we had our weapons slung on our back. We weren't ready by any means. So we go out to the side and we start taking each other's weapons off, handing them, loading a mag, condition 4, and act like nothing happened. And this is the other kicker to it too, on top because I had told people, especially beginning of this episode that we're doing, that I had a camera. I had a little Panasonic camera that had like the screen that pop out, and you could take stills with it. You can shoot video. I had taken while we are on the slope. I had taken some pictures, and I took video of this, and I put that camera in my dump pouch, what they never searched. These guys obviously were thorough enough because when we end up going back onto the ship, we turned our weapons in the armory, obviously. We're kind of looking at each other like, all right, we're not saying anything because it's just going to sound ridiculous. We're also scared because, obviously who we came across, which is still unknown, but they have information on our IDs. They know they got our name, rank, serial number. At any point, if they're DOD personnel by chance, I mean, you talk about this and word gets out somehow, who's to say that anything could have happened? So we end up going to Subic Bay after this was done, which is kind of like a party city in the Philippines. And we, first night out, so we do what Marines do. We drunk and get stupid, so we end up, drinking, trying to just, okay, this is crazy, but we didn't talk about it, obviously. And we just went on, like it was nothing ever happened. And we got back to the ship, and I got back that night, and my camera I had secured in my locker, and I had a combination lock on that. And so I looked at my rack and I noticed that there's something on it. And there's my camera. And the battery pack was taken out of it. And so was the SIM card. And back then the SIM cards were, pretty big. They weren't like the SIM cards you got in something like this.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was missing. So I had a second battery in my locker. So I get my, put in my combination, unlock it, and put the battery in, and nothing. Completely nothing would turn on. So I didn't even think anything of it at that point. I ended up throwing that camera away. And then when I came out with this and came forward publicly, there are people who offered to look at that camera if I still had it, because they could pull the data off of it. That never registered to me in 2009 that you could do something like that, especially somebody who's very well versed in, doing stuff like that. So if I did have that camera still, you're damn right I would have had them try to pull that off, because that's a pretty, at least from what I remember, that taking those videos and pictures would have definitely been a jaw drop for humanity, because it's not something you see every day, and it's still unbelievable, and talking to these guys who participate in operations like this, or have participated in operations like this throughout the world, by the way, this is a normal day at work to them. However, what the contacts that I've made in this organization, these good guys, have said that normally witnesses disappear, they die, right? They kill them. A lot of these people in these organizations, they're psychopaths. They what he more along the lines of explained to me was they play killing games. That's fun to them. Torturing, murdering, maiming people, granted, I'm glad the people that I've been talking to in these organizations are great guys. They've got families, they've got the important stuff, and morals and integrity. They want all this stuff to come out. And if they were able to do it, I'm pretty sure they would have done it, but not in a public sense, because they don't. And I could send you screenshots of this, but they don't want to be known publicly. They don't want to be famous for something like this. They just want transparency. They want government intervention. They want the public to know what the hell's going on. When I had, when I did the National Press Club event with Dr. Greer, and I did his 2-day event, I for years thought it was drugs that they were smuggling or something, because the HVAC's the only thing that made sense to me was either putting drugs in, because you can oxygenate that container, or vacuum seal it. So when I had presented it in Dr. Greer's 2-day event with Disclosure Project, the contact in that organization got a hold of him and said, no, you know what? He says, I was not expecting to talk about this by any means. I was never expecting to come forward by this. He says, I don't want to leave Michael hanging. But it wasn't drugs in those containers.
Okay, so let's take a break right there, because once we get started into that, we'll never get to a commercial break. So let's do that now. Our guest tonight, Mike Herrera, UFO whistleblower. I'm Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. We'll be right back after this short break.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Please visit all of our sponsors. We're taking a quick break here. All of the links are below. We'll be right back.
Join us November 10th, 11th, and 12th, 2023, live at the Luxor Hotel and Casino on the Las Vegas Strip, as Disclosure Fest Foundation and Fade to Black Radio presents Stairway to the Stars, a Human Origins Science and Technology Expo. With live talks, lectures, and workshops by world-acclaimed researchers and authors, featuring topics like human origins, ancient technologies, indigenous teachings, workshops, a mass meditation, yoga and sound healing, music, and so much more. This is Jimmy Church, by the way, and I'll be your host all weekend long. Don't miss our intimate sky watch and meteor shower over the infamous Area 51 airspace in Rachel, Nevada, with special surprise celebrity hosts guiding us through the night. This event will sell out. For more information and tickets, please visit disclosurefest.org.
Hi, everybody. Jimmy Church here. Very special announcement, and that is we are shipping Fade to Black T-shirts again. It's been almost 2 years. We did a full upgrade to the website, so you can head over to jimmychurchradio.com. It's all simple to do, and it's right there. Remember, we broadcast 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday. We bring you the best, the brightest, the most knowledgeable and amazing guests, the best conversations. We do that 4 nights a week. We also do 4 days a week. We broadcast the news, and we do that live too as well. It's not a one-man show. I do it with website support. I do it with producers. I do it with writers and artists. All contribute to the show. The best way to help support what we do here is with the Fade to Black T-shirt. And you can get your Fade to Black T-shirt one of 2 ways. First, go to jimmychurchradio.com, order a shirt. It's really that simple. You're going to get a tracking number, it's going to get shipped, and it's going to get autographed. The second way to get a shirt is with a Game Changer membership. Now, the Game Changer membership not only includes a free T-shirt, but you get a private email to me. You get unlimited commercial-free downloads. You have full access to the website, and everything includes free shipping, and everything is autographed. So help support the show. Get your Fade to Black T-shirt today. The links are below. You can just go to jimmychurchradio.com, and it's right on the website. So there you go. I'm Jimmy Church, Fade to Black. I'm so excited that I just have one thing to say. Go Beckley Teppy. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. Yeah, tonight, it's a lot of coffee drinking going on around here. Mike Herrera is our guest. Whew, what a show. All right. Man. Okay. So, quick recap. Mike just took the first half of the show to give the full detail of his encounter with a craft that he describes the surface of it as hexagons that were interlocked and changing color as it moved from a light, like a matte gray, to a darker gray. And it's rotating above this platform. And there was another group of paramilitary, a security team, that he's with 4 other guys. There's 5 in total. They get surrounded, and disarmed. And the craft comes down. Some trucks come in. He doesn't see where the trucks go. They may have entered into this platform situation. He's not sure. But anyway, the craft attaches itself to this platform, rises up, and takes off to his left towards the ocean. And at that point, I'm just doing a quick recap. They go back to the ship. They go to another port. And that's where we are now. The question is, why HVAC systems? What was being transported in those trailers? There were 4 trucks with trailers that showed up, and he didn't see where they went. And that's where we left off, and we're going to pick up right there. So, Mike, I saw your presentation at the press club in Washington, D.C., and was very impressed that day with the things that you had to say. I'm glad that we have, now we've met in person and we've hung out a few times. But I'm confused about not confused. I have questions, I should say. Why HVAC systems? And you were approached, and you got some further information about what may have occurred. So let's pick up from there. What do you think was in? What do you now believe was the contents of those trailers?
Well, after being briefed by these guys that participate in these operations, and these guys have been in this organization since the 90s. So they spun me up on the whole history of how they got started, where they got screened from. A lot of these guys, come to find out, are screened from JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, which is top of the best. Um, so they pick the guys. They have the way that I'm not going to go into specific details because obviously I don't want to throw alert to people, because this is always going to be watched. And there's always people screening for this. So I'm going to keep their identities. I'm going to keep very things that are, if I can't explain it because it reveals too much, please understand that. But I'm trying to keep these guys safe. Um, so they had explained to me in person. They had offered. They contacted some of my contacts, asked for or they didn't ask for my contact information. They provide my contacts their information for me to reach out, and I did. Because one, I wanted answers to know what why? Who are they and why? Like what is this about? Like, like my question is why did you guys let us live? That was kind of more my thinking, like, what wouldn't it have been easier to just kill us and just went on your way and that's it? But, like I said, things happen for a reason. They flew me out to a place out west, and I got to meet these guys. They had in the room that I went to, it wasn't really like a skiff, but it was a security area that they had, and they pulled out like this wand thing that had like it's the only way I can describe it, but they had me go over my body with it, made sure I didn't have any bugs, told me to put my plane in airplane mode, and they explained to me the reason what I saw and what it was for. All right. HVAC systems, obviously, like we said earlier, I thought it was drugs that they were running because that makes sense. I mean, you have something that if you were to report it to the authorities, they're not going to believe you. They could be making so much money off of this. And they had told me that I was wrong about that. They said it wasn't.
Were you also thinking extraterrestrial? Were you thinking ET at that point?
Not really. Just because the human element to it, it's like, why would ETs be concerned with this kind of stuff if it is drugs? What are they getting a lot of drugs and taking it to a planet or something and trying to have
Right, 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 right,
so
right,
it
right.
kind of just sounded a little bit outlandish to me, even though this already is. But you know, um, talking to these guys, they explain the whole reason what this happened and what it's for. Um, they screen people that have certain abilities consciously, higher consciousness. They more screen people from third world countries because they're not indoctrinated, they're not programmed by television. They don't have the same resources. So, with that being said, they're not as clouded. So, they're more spiritually adept people. Bureau of Indian Affairs is also the other people that they get, for the same reason because they're spiritually more adept. They're more consciously evolved. So, they're able to partake in these programs. All right. And it's not like they
And I'm not being cavalier, right? But me, I'm out. They
same here.
have zero interest in me.
This computer I'm using, do you know how long it took me to set up? For better lack of terms, I'm technologically retarded. So there's no way I could ever participate on something like that. You give me like a car, I can tear a car apart. I can do combustible engines, things like that. I can do wires, I can do fuel systems, that's all self-taught. I'm an autodidact to a degree. Weapons, because that's another thing what I do, heavy equipment. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm interested in, I teach myself. But stuff like this, I mean, this in lack of better words, it's crazy.
So so I'm understanding you correctly. And this is very interesting, by the way. You need pilots or operators of these systems that have a clear mind, that
Correct.
are consciously able to interface with the flight control systems and all of the logistics that are involved to fly these craft. You have to have a certain level of abilities that involve consciousness, and that's what they are looking for, right?
Yes, correct. And that's why they choose the people that they do. They ex-
Interesting.
they expressed to me that these people are not taken against their will. They have more explained it as almost like the United States looking for a cheaper labor force outside of this country to do things, right? They do the same thing, but with these programs. So this black team or this organization, which is globally and is transnational, borders do not exist. They operate in this grand scheme of things. They move free across any borders. They're not governed by any government or anything like that. For obvious reasons. I mean, they use craft that people think is extraterrestrial when it's in fact man-made, and they use this under a guise because it throws confusion. It's also stuff that makes them move very, very silently, very, very fast, and, it's not conventional aircraft, so they have that benefit. Um, so these systems and these guys had said that this is boring. They said that flying is boring. It's just transport. They explain I mean, the way that they explain this process, but they have other stuff they have yet to tell me and read me up on that are way more interesting than flying, than aviation, right? So, one thing that they had explained was weapon systems, certain weapon systems. Um, but again, they use these weapon systems that they target ET craft. This black site that I went to, I'm not going to give a location of it, but it's a very active site. They shoot down 2 to 3 ET craft a year, and they retrieve it, and they take it, and they do whatever they do. They also shoot down other agencies' reverse engineer craft as well, and most of the time it's all destroyed. They don't give it back. They blow it up. They discard all of that. And, they don't use the airspace 24/7 as restricted airspace, even though when they do operations or things like this, testing, if you will, they restrict it all the way to 60,000 feet. And unfortunately, there's been some private aircraft that have paid the price of their lives because they did not divert course and they were shot down with these experimental, or I should say, these advanced weapons, because they're not experimental. I mean, they use these on a regular basis, and they discarded the wreckage, they discarded the bodies, and they put missing persons report out. They're all hell bent at keeping their secrets, and that's how they work. So this base in particular, I mean, from the top part of it, doesn't look like anything. It looks abandoned. It looks like a quote unquote nothing burger, as I was told. But it's very active, and stuff happens out there that gets very interesting. And people have seen some things reported in that area. And he's confirmed, at least one of them has confirmed some stuff, at least that I brought to his attention. So, long story short, they screen these people, they bring them along. These people know what they're getting into because they're taken from less desirable parts in the world that nobody wants to live in because it's either war torn or very poor parts of the world. So if they're taken care of with their necessities, their well-being, they're fed, they got a clean place to live, housing, medical, everything, that is like heaven compared to where they're at.
Yeah, they want to be there.
Yeah.
So they want that
Yes, they
situation,
do.
and that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
And it also enabled there's no negativity in the body,
Correct.
right? Yeah, that's wow, what an interesting concept.
Well, everybody
It-
always asks the questions of, why don't the people, the janitors or the cooks or the facility maintenance people come forward? Because they're a part of these people that are taken to these installations that want to be there. So if they're used to this way of
right,
life and they were to
right,
come forward and blow the lid off of this, and all of a sudden they're taken out of that system, well, now
right,
they're going back home. They don't want to change their lifestyle. And
right,
what he
right.
explained to me, and what these guys explained to me was that if you were to liberate these people, you would liberate people who don't want to be liberated for these reasons. Yeah, the way that describes at least this program I'm going to tell you guys about. So, since the black team has no idea or even how they can consciously hook up to these technologies, and we're talking about ET craft that they shoot down among numerous things. I mean, again, I'm learning about this as much as you guys are, but I learn it from the horse's mouth, and then you guys learn it from me. So they use these people, and they call them psionics. And this program they're in is called Psionic Perpetual Program, or what they dubbed it as P3. P3 is a program that basically uses technology that hooks up to these people, these psionics. The psionics then hook up to the technology and relay back to the black team of how they could utilize it, what it is. They could pilot it, they could do whatever they want with it. They can translate for the black team on how this can be utilized. At the same time, they are flooded with serotonin and a bunch of uppers like drugs. And like anything in this world, too much of something is not a good thing. And these people do pass away because of severity of how being on uppers all the time, which elevates them to that level of consciousness to where they can operate whatever it is. They pass away. It's not immediate, it's over time. But like somebody who is in hospice, if they're flooded with drugs like this and they're dying from cancer, well, they feel good because they're flooded with these drugs that make them feel good. And they don't feel like they're dying, but they know they're dying. So they partake in this because it makes them feel good until the inevitable happens. You know,
Yeah. Yeah,
because
makes sense.
because
Makes
of them,
sense.
it does when you start thinking about how this actually operates, because yes, there is a missing link to this events technology, and it's these people. I had no idea of that. I thought that this was something that they had figured out since the 1940s, which is when this black team was created. It was created in 1947 during the National Security Act, when they started getting into this stuff with Roswell. And Roswell wasn't the only one. Roswell was one of three. They had a crash over Socorro, or I should say shoot down, because that's what they did. Wasn't a crash. I mean, you have beings, from what they have told me, that have very, very, very high IQs, that can travel between space and time, that could literally, it's not linear per se, but they can bend space and time like 2 points, like folding a piece of paper together is how they travel. They can go interdimensional. So if these beings are that advanced, I highly doubt that they come to a New Mexico high desert and all of a sudden crash when they can do stuff like that. The reason is because they got shot down. There's 3 craft that day that got shot down. One by Socorro, one at Roswell, obviously, which everybody knows about, and one over in Tombstone. And it actually took them a little bit of time to find the one over by Socorro, I believe, because of the way it crashed. But these guys have a crash retrieval team that they operate, that they, at least the black I know of that I've been to, that they shoot down ET craft 2 to 3 times a year, and they retrieve them. They have protocols for everything that they do. This organization is global, so it's not just happening at this black site. This is happening to wherever they have secluded areas where they know where these craft are going to be, and they target them and shoot them down. Yes, they have occupants that are either dead or alive, and that's what they deal with. They have bodies at these facilities. These guys want this stuff to come out. These guys want the transparency of it, because at one point they thought they were doing something beneficial to this country, to everybody involved with it, for national security, to be the superpower of the world, but they're being misled and lied to. And this organization's using these people to further their own activities of whatever it is that they do. This group came alive, like I said, in 1947. The Clinton administration, now, because you have rotation or changing of the guard, so to speak, right? Because of election cycles, and people get out of the government, retire, pass away. So over time, the knowledge of this group is starting to fade away. And this was a division of the Air Force at one time. They had JSOC, which was established in 1970s or 80s, and then they had this other group that was the black teams. So Clinton administration, they wanted in on this so bad. Clinton was waved off, among with other government officials, to say, hey, we just found out about a black team's existence that has to deal with crash retrievals of UFOs. And here's the thing that people get confused. The government, blue team, the black team are separate, but they pull from blue team and they turn them into black team, right? So blue team, from what Grusch has been coming out, among other whistleblowers, have talked about the blue team's crash retrievals. That's real. But they don't know about the black team and their operations with crash retrievals. Theirs is more advanced compared to blue team. Blue team's elementary compared to black team as far as the technologies they've got to utilize that. So
Let me jump in real quick.
okay.
A week before you spoke at the press club, David Grusch made his statements a week before. Have you spoken to David Grusch?
I have spoken to David Grusch.
Did you know about him before his testimony at Congress, or the Ross Coulthard or the debrief story?
I actually, at that point, I knew who he was based off of the information that Dr. Greer provided me, because Dr. Greer was briefing him and some of his people at one point.
Right.
The reason why, so I had members of the Senate Intelligence Committee as well as the Intelligence Community Inspector General reach out to me, at least the former. I'm not going to give any names here. And if you guys look up Google of who the former ICIG is, you'll find out who I'm talking about. Guy's a bulldog. All right. Very solid guy, very good guy. Um, Again, they got Homeland Security involved because obviously of what we were all hypothesizing. I'm not going to say it live because I don't need this thing to get shut down. But there's a part of Homeland Security that specializes in a certain part of, uh, you know, getting people back home, so to speak. So I interviewed these agents, of course, because they're adept to this. These agents are pilots. They've seen stuff. They've taken reports on things. So they got my story of it because they want to know the aspect of it. And I showed them the information that I'm sharing with everybody, of course, because I was given the green light to by this organization, with respecting an anonymity of things, keeping them out of the picture, but still in the picture to a degree. So Brush was the one who lined up those people, screened them for me to make sure that they weren't people either that were a part of something that were trying to keep it quiet, trying to
Mhm.
snuff out things like that. So Grush is a good guy. Grush is somebody who is very sincere. We're all on the same team doing things. I don't get into the drama of things that may be going on between other people. That's their stuff. What I'm focused on is bringing the truth to light and getting stuff handled in this way. And ultimately, we're all doing the same. So the fact that I was given the opportunity to speak with him, he knew about my testimony. He actually, something that was very weird. He knew somebody that was working under him that knew about what I experienced as far as the craft, and they were just very surprised that it was operational. So they knew it existed. They just didn't know it was operational. What they were using it for.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, let's stay right there for a second. So, uh, Grush made his statements to Congress,
Yes, he did.
sworn testimony, right? And watching the reactions now, for some of the representatives, this is mind blowing stuff. There were others that knew some of the things that Grush was going to present. Obviously, right? He was vetted, and they pursued the questioning. You also interfaced with government officials too, as well.
Yes.
What was that setting, and who was asking the questions, and how did that go down?
Well, as much as I would like to give names, I signed a non-disclosure agreement with them stating I would not provide any names for specific reasons, especially keeping these political figures out of it. What I will tell you this is I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed that some of the ones I spoke to um, turned their
Was
back
it the okay, with no names?
on
We
names.
don't need that here. But was it the Senate?
Part of the Senate, part of Congress, Pentagon
Okay.
officials, military, White House military office, Special Intelligence Service, which oversees the letter agencies, as well as the Senate Intelligence Committee. I had all these people. When I went to Capitol Hill to talk about this before I went to the Pentagon, I briefed them the same thing when I talked to the Air Office of the Pentagon. And what I'm disappointed in is that these guys said that they don't have anything that they could go off of. And the beautiful thing, though, what I'm going to get to is the fact that that time I started getting like, okay, this isn't getting any traction. What got traction was the fact that these guys I've been speaking with in this black organization also contacted the people I've been talking to. And the only reason why they came forward is because I beat them to the punch. And I came forward and they corroborated what I saw. And they explained in detail why Just like I'm telling everybody here, they said the same thing. They handed them documents. I had given you, it's called the Sentinels of Ether, right? That is a book they had to send to DOPSR. So DOPSR is a defense pre-publication office, right? So this is something if they want to publish materials, military, government, they have to go through this organization to have them vet it, redact things if need be, and put it into circulation. So they had a manuscript that they put out that had like over 90,000 words, and there was I think 30,000 words that were taken out of this that they redacted over 12 or 9 pages of stuff that they, took out because they didn't want the public to know. I had given you a brief description on why that was, and they said the only reason why they're sharing this out is because it corroborates and edifies my testimony. So because now these guys want transparency on all of this stuff, I'm the voice for their organization, at least these guys that are trying to come forward. So they're relaying information to me that I can leak out to the public that's safe enough, that keeps their names out of it, that keeps some ambiguity to try to track and who it might be coming from. And I respect them 100% for that. That was one thing I was not expecting, because normally through this, I thought I was just going to go to Washington, D.C. I thought I was going to talk to the Senate Intelligence Committee. I thought I was going to talk to everybody else. I thought I was going to do Greer's event. I thought I was going to do the press club, and that would have been it. I thought that that's all this was going to turn into. And all of a sudden, I've got this organization literally, offered the chance to explain everything and why they do what they do, and it's life changing because I've got to know these guys on a personal level. They're very good guys. They're just misled, and they were a part of something that, if they knew at that time, maybe they could have gotten out of it. But now, they're helping me so I can help them. At the same time, because they have now reached out to Senate Intelligence Committee, they started taking my stuff serious because now
I've
they
seen some of the communication, and I have to say that the way it varies, very sensitive subjects, I might add. But the style of the communication seems pretty genuine.
it is.
Seems pretty honest, and it doesn't seem. I want to say this correctly. It seems like when you say good people, it's almost like it's my neighbor,
Yeah.
right? In these communications, very open. I guess I hope I'm trying to stay in bounds here, right? I don't want to say anything. I don't want to disclose anything, but I think you understand the way that I'm saying this. It's like I'm reading something that feels genuine, open, and honest. It's a weird way to phrase it and describe it, but I don't think I'm too far off, am I?
No, you're not. And if you recall, one line that he said in that communication to the Senate Intelligence Committee was the first thing that he needs to take care of is his family. The second is is the American people, and third is the military and government. So as long as number 3 takes care of the first 2 for him, he will play ball.
Mhm.
He will help, and that's what he's made it. And which I agree. We all have families at the end of the day, and that's what we care for. That's our blood. These guys have children. These guys have wives. It's amazing that they, when I first met these guys, and I found out through, talking to them briefly before I met them face to face, I was a little bit upset because I was going to ask the question, how would you feel if your wife and your kids were a part of these programs? And it's like they read my mind because they started going off on why they want this to happen, because they wouldn't like something like that to happen. But understanding that these people are voluntary and they know what they're getting, they don't know at the time what they're getting themselves into. But when they start doing it, they have a lavish lifestyle compared to what they're used to. So I
It's
don't,
probably, man, Mike, it's probably pretty friggin' cool.
to be honest with you, it sounds cool. Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not thinking that anybody is being held against their will. No. It sounds pretty fun to me. But let me circle back, and I don't want to run out of time. Circle back to Grusch's statements and some of your information about backwards engineered craft. Okay, now and the work that is this Grusch made these statements.
Yes.
And Grusch said directly he's got names, addresses, and everything that they need, and he can provide the locations of all of this stuff. Now, that was under oath. That's a
Yeah.
pretty, when we're talking about UFOs and ET and aliens and an advanced civilization coming to this planet, to Congress, these are heavy words. These are big statements. The craft that you saw, was it backwards engineered? Was this something that was built on planet Earth from off-world technology? I'm asking a very direct question.
100% it was man-made. It had paneling, it had bolts, it had seams, it had ridges, it had stuff that you could tell looking at it was manufactured. It wasn't like a smooth surface that just like one piece. It was paneled, you know what I mean? Like it was put together. You could tell it was. And that's one clue to say, because I've heard presentations, even from Dr. Herrera, among other people who have came in contact with these real craft. Even these guys in this organization said the same thing, that these craft are seamless. They're smooth. They're like it's like an organic thing is the only way they can describe it, as opposed to the reverse engineered, which is they're replicated technologically to replicate the same thing, but appearance is different. But it's still ET to the person's untrained eye. But you can see the paneling on this, so 100% it was man-made.
Now, you talked about locations out west. Now, without getting specific here, and I personally, I don't want to get in trouble because I live in the middle of all of this drama. All right, and everybody knows that.
Right.
And in my neighborhood, and you know where I'm at, I've got neighbors, man, that are involved in this stuff, and they all know what I do. And I'm not going to get run out of town, right? Okay.
No.
I'm not going to be that guy. But that being said, we're not talking about Area 51. We're talking about other locations out west, correct?
Yes. Oh yeah.
And you have visited some of these or
Just
all
one.
of them?
Just
one.
Yep.
Okay. This is, again, everybody, you have to understand the sensitive issues that we're dealing with here. But I spoke with Mike about a few of these locations, and we know exactly where. How do I say this, man? I don't want to get into any trouble. We both understand that we know where these locations are, right? It's safe to say that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Man, I'm waiting for the black helicopters. It's going to happen.
Well, I mean,
moment.
it could happen. I mean, I'll take my word for it. That's one thing I've had to deal with for the past couple months.
Right. Now, over these areas, if somebody, a civilian, sees something that is strange to them, it would get reported. If it does get reported, right, it would be a UFO.
Yep.
It would be assumed to be not of this earth, but that isn't necessarily the case. Right.
So what I'm going to go ahead and say is 80%. I'm pretty sure 80% is a solid number saying this, not exaggerating. 80% of what people are saying out there is ours, and I mean man-made. So stuff that's classified airspace, something you'd see during Groom Lake if you were out that way, maybe the high deserts of California, you may come across stuff like that. And at one point, the F-117 stealth fighter looked like a UFO, and people didn't know what the hell it was. The B-2,
That's right.
it's kind of the same thing. So there's a mixture, but the stuff that doesn't move like a fighter jet, that's just linear, has thrust, all that kind of stuff, something that just can go like this, literally, but multiples of the speed of sound, so several thousand miles an hour instantaneously. I mean, it's stuff that obviously we have some bright minds. We've got people who are geniuses who have worked on stuff like this that maybe been able to propel that kind of technology. But at the same time, I mean, I'm even from what I've been briefed on, most of the time it's ours.
So
This is where we touch in real quick though, because
sure.
this is where people are getting people hear about Project Bluebeam and all this kind of stuff with holograms. No, no, no. These guys are way past that. So the narrative right now, and these are people in the communities, by the way, that are being misled about this, is that there's an alien invasion that's going to happen. Thankfully, the word has been getting out that the fake alien invasion is what they're trying to conspire since the 50s, trying to pull this off. And that's the big thing. So knowing what these guys have, because I've confirmed without confirming at least them directly, because I don't ask them direct questions, because I don't, again, you know how this is. I don't want them getting fried for it. I don't want to get fried for it. I don't need anybody else getting fried for it. But they confirmed to me that they've got stuff that is reverse engineered. That is, like, again, in their words, boring. Everybody's so enamored with UFOs, and that's just a part of their work. It's like going to the office and having a fancy chair to sit in. You know what I mean? To them, it's just like it's like that. Somebody outside of it, oh, that's a cool chair. I've never seen anything like that. And to us who ever have that, would be like, oh, it's just a damn chair. It's the same thing with them.
Yeah, and this is what, and I like the hexagon comment from you, because I'm going to share this with you in the audience. I was coming out of, I'm just going to say it. I was coming out of Best Buy, right? I got something on a cart and I'm wheeling it out to my Jeep. And I hear from in back of me in the parking lot in the middle of the day, I hear fade to black. Right? I stop and I turn around and this guy goes, wow, it is you. And I go, yeah. And he goes, welcome, man. And he goes, man, I've got a Jeep just like yours. And he points to it. He's parked a couple of spaces away from it. I said, oh, that's cool. And he goes, man, I got to tell you a story. I said, okay, here we go. Right. This is my world. This is what happens. He says, in the 90s, he says, I'm born and raised here. He goes, in the 90s, in high school, they were testing hexagon craft that were flying around, and they were flight testing them every single day. I go, what? I've never heard this, right? I go, what do you mean hexagon? He goes, dude, like a stop sign. And they were flat and black and big. And I said, how big? I've never heard anything described like this before. And we've all heard everything, right? He goes, from here to the building. And I turn around and I look, and I'm guessing, I don't know, 80 feet, right? That's a pretty big craft. Mm-hmm. And he said that they were silent. And he said we would stand out outside of the high school and watch them every day. Every day. He said, then they stopped. We don't see him anymore. So, it's good to meet you, blah, blah, blah. Take our selfies. And he jumps in his Jeep and I jump in mine and we go our separate ways. But I went and mentioned this, not only on the show, but I've talked to a few researchers about this description. And I just found it amazing that now this community where I'm at, there is stuff that is being tested all the time. All right. Very advanced things. And I get that. But I've never heard, and I see, I've told you some of the things I've seen, and it's pretty nuts. It's pretty cool. But never a hexagon 80-foot silent craft. That and then you combine that with what you saw. It sounds like your craft that you saw was built out of miniature versions, right? Of what was being tested. And it's the hexagon description to me, I think it's the fascinating part. And I don't think it's coincidence.
No, what I saw was octagon shape. I mean, just the shape of the craft was octagon. It had the same patterns on that paneling, and that's what it looked like, was just paneling. I mean, it could have been anything that they used to paneling. I mean, who knows? The what I've been learning about this and going down this rabbit hole, because that's where I live these days. If I'm not doing business, it's doing stuff like this. I'm being provided information, so I'm living in a damn rabbit hole for pretty much majority of the time outside of business. And again, anything's possible, and that's what I've been learning into this. Things that I thought were not possible are being done, and having it confirmed from this group of guys, who would do this on a regular basis, who partake in it, who have partaken in these operations is just mind blowing. One of the things I want to touch on with this is I don't know if you read the part of the book that I sent you.
I
Um,
did.
okay, you understand what they were talking about because they talked about the containers that I saw that they were had the helicopters dropping in, and that's where they were putting these refugees into, right? And then this is when I talked about the killing games because they killed the JSOC operator that got wind. The whole point of that was JSOC thought that that was nuclear proliferation. They were dealing with that back then. And so they thought that these containers and these people were being moved were part of that. So they got wind of it, decided to go in and intervene. Lo and behold, they had no idea that a black team existed and they got killed by the black team. And these guys were there when that happened. And they explained in some detail, at least hypothetically, you know what I mean by that, of what their role was during that time and what they were doing. And it made sense because they were able to provide that information hypothetically. Now, when this all comes full scale, hopefully it does, and this all gets put behind us to a degree, at least the dangerous aspect of it, then maybe they can tell more to it. But I had sent you a screenshot through one of the contacts that he is interested in talking to some people about this. And I mean, people like you, Jimmy, and
Hmm.
I may have to set that up. As long as they respect which I know you will, being anonymous to it. But these guys, they want it to come out, and I know what they've been providing me. I'm thankful for that because again, it's getting it out there, but it's also explaining what I saw and why. So I don't feel so much bad about it to a degree because now what they had set straight because they don't want to be compared to the negative stuff you see in quote unquote Hollywood, for example, or these other things, right? They want to be separate from that. So it made me feel good that this bothered them a little bit, you know. Ultimately, I think the end game of what they're trying to do is perpetrated fake alien invasions, just like they've been talking about since the 50s. And these guys are aware of it. So these guys have to be specific with it, with coordinating with Blue Team, because obviously, if word got out that they were planning something, for example, who knows what these bad guys would do? I mean, they have technologies that could do circles around the most advanced stuff that we know conventionally, like that B2 or the B-21 Raider, or the F-35. I mean, these things are way more advanced than that stuff. And I'm sure the weapon systems, from what they described to me, would be something that would make anything conventional that we have obsolete. So I can see the fear in these guys because it's serious stuff, especially the government officials that told me plenty of time that they don't want to get in the middle of that because they're in fear of their lives. And some of these guys have black helicopters going over their house, harassing their families, harassing them because they're getting too close to this, and it wasn't something I was expecting to ever deal with, but I'm thankful they provide me the resources to look into it. At the same time, take pictures, get locations, and provide that to the Pentagon so the Pentagon can look into it. As a matter of fact, I think you read in the transcript I had sent you, um, one of the government officials have this issue. And they talked about having, because these guys have their own helicopters, they have their own assets, and they can detain these people, interrogate them, and figure out what the hell's going on. So they have offered protection to the government officials as well as myself, and I feel good about that. So I think when this surfaces more to a degree, it's going to blow people's minds that this eventually one day is going to be common knowledge. And I think with this integration, because you talk about Elon Musk, for example, wanting to integrate AI technology into the human brain, maybe to consciousness level. But yet we're already doing that, but in a different sense that blows people's minds to a higher degree of consciousness instead of having the technology doing it. But then listening to Dr. Greer's presentations with people who've worked on programs with this that involve conscious associated technologies, which means they put a apparatus or something on them that allows their consciousness to go up. So they can remote view easier, they can do things at a consciousness level, and then you have consciousness associated technology, so technology that helps further that. So these black teams have been developing this stuff since the 40s, amplifying their abilities to allow them to partake in things that, I mean, I don't understand yet because it's not like I'm doing things directly with them, But in the same token, it's providing understanding of how they can utilize this and how they've been getting away with it. I think that's the most mind-blowing.
Yeah, and the whole black helicopter scenario and how this has been described in other craft too as well. It sounds so fantastical and unbelievable to the uninitiated. And I talked to my Uncle Bill, who is he's retired now, but was a flight instructor for the Army helicopters for decades. That's what he did. He did 3 tours in Nam, by the 3, re-upped to go back.
Wow.
Crazy. This is my Uncle Bill. He's been on the show, by the way. And he's a great guy. Anyway, he said, of course there's black helicopters. And I go, what are you talking about? He goes, man, the tail numbers are there. They're in black. They say, they say what that, but they're in black. And so when I saw those Ospreys last week, that's the one thing I noticed, that, Marines, right? It's painted in the same color as the craft.
Yep.
It says Marines, but it's in gray on a gray craft. The flight number, the tail numbers, all the information that's on the craft is there, but it's the same color as the craft. I thought that was so interesting.
Oh, yeah.
That, and people wonder about this. How could we do that legally? No, it's got a tail number. It says United States Marines. It's just it's painted in the same color as the craft.
Yep.
Now, what about and great conversation tonight, Mike. I look forward to not only hanging out with you, and we've got some stuff planned, but having you back on the show too as well, because tonight we just scratched the surface on multiple subjects. Let me ask you this: is Congress, who writes the checks, right? Mm-hmm. And is the Senate now surprised about how the special access programs have been handled, have been audited, and what they've actually been working on? Is this something that there will now be oversight, and they're going to pull this stuff back and have more information about what is actually going on? Are they just blown away about these subjects?
I think they're blown away to a degree that their egos are being crushed. And I think that it sucks for them because these people think they know everything because they sit in power.
Right.
So they're being told things that, hey, you guys know nothing about. Then all of a sudden their mind gets, their ego gets flustered, their mind gets flustered because now they're dealing with things that they thought that they had a grip on, and having groups do things without their consent or knowledge. No, I mean, I imagine it's dangerous in some ways to their egos, which I think is good because it brings them back to being humble and have humility to understand that every single one of them is in the same position we are. They're trying to get to the bottom of this. And if they're trying to do that, that's great, and I'm all for it. But there's some things that I gotta say. It depends on who it is, because this black organization, they told me to think of it like a nebulous cancer. It's like a secret society. They are in the political system. They are in the judicial system. They are in local and law enforcement agencies. They are all over the place. The entertainment business, everything. They've embedded themselves so well in the last 70, 80 years that they have people eyes and ears all over the place. So when they were given the warning about this to at least the Senate Intelligence Committee, because people who get too close on this end up seeing the same stuff I see with these black helicopters. Maybe, there's been people who floated down the Potomac River because the fact that they tried to get to the bottom of this. There's been people assassinated, even JFK, so to speak, which, I mean, I can't confirm that, but rumor is that he was trying to blow the lid on this too, and that's part of the reason why. But again, I wasn't alive at the time, and I don't know anybody directly involved, so I can't comment on that. But
yeah, that's a mystery that, you know what, that may never come out of the bottle right there, that genie. Let me ask you this before. Okay, let's change the subject a little bit. Let's lighten this up, but I want your reaction. Okay, I guarantee you've never been asked this, and no host will ever dip their toe in this water. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
You're married, right? Which means you dated this woman at some point.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Dude, do you disclose this on the first date? Did she know that all this stuff, man? How do you handle that? And did she did she know when you guys were dating?
No, she had no clue. I mean, I'm involved in some very controversial stuff as it is. I mean, if anybody recognizes that tattoo, right? So there's always a bunch of conspiracies about that,
Right.
and I've been a part as a Freemason for longer than 2008.
Did you
Is
disclose that you were a Freemason when you were
well,
dating?
I mean, if you saw the cars that I have my emblems on the back and I'm right by my license plate. So she saw those. She saw my tattoo. She sees my pin, I mean, she got me this ring, you know. So
Yeah,
she
I
knows.
saw
She
that.
knows.
I saw that. I,
So
yeah, if that was missing after our dinner that night when we shook hands, I thought about it. I thought about it. I thought it could cross my mind. But is she dealing with this UFO thing? And when did you? You got to come out of the closet at some point. How did you approach that, and how did she handle it?
I told her that I experienced something that I couldn't necessarily talk about to her until after I got back from DC from my first visit. Okay, after I got clearance when this came out, and then it was more her seeing it in person when I did the press club event as well as Dr. Greer's event. So now that she had the full picture and she had no idea. And then when she started noticing that I was starting to have meetings with some very important people in the government, from senators, Congress, Senate Intelligence Committee, Special Intelligence Service, military, White House military officials, things like that, even Pentagon officials, she says, well, obviously there's some merit to it. What she was what she was freaked out about, and I don't blame her for this, was meeting with the horse's mouth with his black team. That
Right.
more nerve wracking for her because, and mind you, like I said, they put the invitation out to talk to them and meet with them. And I was very hesitant because all of a sudden you start having what I experienced start playing again. These guys are going to kill me. These guys are going to put me in an area where they're at that they could do whatever they want. So I left before this initial meeting. I left a paper trail. Of course, Dr. Grett, trust him. But come to find out, members of the Senate Intelligence Committee were also talking to this guy. So they already. Oh yeah, we've been talking to him. So that made me feel really good, that all of a sudden that everybody's connecting the dots because I started having the thoughts like, am I going to have to play sides here?
Right.
And, obviously I don't want to be stuck in between that because you got some very serious folks on either side that could, for a better lack of words, screw your life up, So having those thoughts, but with her, I mean, like I said, she was more hesitant with the idea that I was going to meet with these people. Now she's thankful because she understands that it's helped my cause even more. The fact that I'm helping them out as well as them helping me out. I think it's been a great turn of events for that. And there's been some more developments that have happened with them telling me, things that have happened. I don't know of yet because I've yet to have a meeting. I assume that it's going to be relatively soon. And when that's the case, and I'm able to provide that, um, maybe at one point I can get you in touch with with a couple of these guys. And, they can probably tell you off record of what things are going on. But for your show, for your viewers, for myself, it'll paint
Mhm.
a better picture for you because they want this to come out, and I think it should, and they think it should. And we all are on the same team with this. But unfortunately, we have an uphill battle because there's people who don't want this to come out. But the beautiful thing is, when this does, and I have a very confident feeling that it will because their time's about to be up. When that happens, humanity is going to be elevated to a level of consciousness by itself with some technologies that are so amazing that could help the human race in such a way that doesn't keep us with what we're dealing with right now. And I think that with this kind of technology, it's going to breed um, peace among countries that probably wouldn't because now we're on the same level consciously. If you're at a higher consciousness, you're not going to have the primitive natures of wanting to kill everything, wanting to rape, pillage, you name it. You're going to be happier because ultimately, I mean, look at the bad people in the world. They're filled with greed. They're filled with lust. They're filled with things that, in the Bible would say that is against the commandments, so to speak, right? Things that you shouldn't be doing. This is what these guys are doing. The people who are happier, who are elevated, they're happier from a genuine sense. And I think this technology, once it does become, I hate using this word, but mainstream,
Right.
you know, I think humanity's got a good surprise for it coming up. Granted, this goes the way that I think it does, and it's not going to happen overnight. I know it's going to happen in our lifetime, and I know people behind the scenes are working very hard to make sure that this does happen.
And thank you for being a part of that. And I'll end with this. I've been saying this because I've been thinking this a lot, and I think we might have even discussed it in person, but I mentioned it on the show. And I think that the world used to, I mean, the world, right, globally, when it came to the ET question, it was, who are they? Right? Who are they? Who are they? Where do they come from?
Right.
And once this crosses the line, and disclosure is here, and this is everything is out in the open, that's not the question to be asked. It's what you're saying. It's, who are we?
Yes.
Right? That's the question. That's where we get elevated. Where are we? Who are we in this big story that is about to unfold, and what is our place in it? That's the question that needs to be asked, and that's part of the elevation. Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
One thing I want to say, I mean, for those who are interested, please check out Dr. Greer's website, seriousdisclosure.com, StephenGreer.com. If anybody's a whistleblower, you got information on something like this, please get a hold of him, get a hold of myself, however you have to. And I mean, if you got a big part of the picture too, let's get it heard. And it doesn't have to be public like how I did it. The thing I want to say, Jimmy, is I remember when we had dinner and you said this thing, I'll never forget this. And I think about it every day. You said that one day there's a potential that there could be ETs that land on Earth, and every single one of us is going to be wrong with how we thought the life of the universe is, how the world is, whatever it is. Every single one of us is going to be wrong. I think about that every day because it brings humbleness to you because we don't know everything. We only know what we're told. We only know what we experience. I get people all the time, well, how do I know that ETs or UFOs are real? There's a lot of proof. Disclosure's already happened. But they expect a person on a podium to come with a suit and tie that may be an elected official to say, hey, guys, we're not alone. Disclosure's already happened. Well, I didn't see that. Well, you know the Titanic exists? Well, I saw pictures of it. So you never actually went to the bottom of the ocean and took a look at it, right? Well, no. Okay. So how do you know it exists? You didn't see it for your own eyes. You're relying on other people to tell you the truth. The thing is, other people are telling the truth, and they're telling a truth on a subject that has been made purposely to be made ridiculed. This is why senators at one point or anybody never got into it. So I'm thankful, and this has been a beautiful journey so far. It's been rough, don't get me wrong. The beautiful part, because there's always sacrifice, there's always give, and there's take, and there's always some sacrifices to be made. I am thankful that people are open-minded, and more people are becoming open-minded, and more people are sharing experiences that they've had because they were afraid to say something about this. Even just a normal person at a park, for example, that sees something floating up in the sky. Now they don't have to feel dumb about this. What I feel is going to be the change here is if you don't believe in something like this over in the future, then all of a sudden those people who don't believe in it are going to feel dumb.
Yeah. We're going to be on the right side of history for
Yes, we will.
sure. Mike, thank you so much. I'll talk to you over the weekend. I want you to be safe. Tell your wife I said hello, and she's amazing, by the way.
She is.
You're a lucky man. She's amazing. So just be safe out there. I'll be in touch over the next couple of days, and I look forward to getting a chance to hang out and having you back on the show. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Jimmy. It's been a pleasure.
Mike Herrera. Perfect night on the show. Thank you so much, Mike. Be safe out there. We ran a little bit over. I apologize to everybody. Mike, thank you so much. You're the absolute very best. Links for Dr. Greer are below, and we've got them over on the website too as well. And I want to remind everybody as I get out of here, Tomorrow night on the show, I've got a special Wednesday night double feature. I have Sarah Breskman Cosme on the second half of the show. First half of the show is Caroline Corey. So it's a Wednesday night special double feature tomorrow night. I'll see everybody tomorrow. And then, of course, I will see you tomorrow on the news. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. And now, as I do all of this, we've got Thursday night, too, as well, with Randall Carlson. So we got a great week ahead. We're only halfway through. Fade to Black is produced by Hill J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thank you to Dennis and Kevin. Thank you to Genocide and Zenzabil, too, as well. You guys were busy tonight. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2023 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll see everybody tomorrow night with Caroline Corey and Sarah Breskman Cosme. Until then, I want you to be safe. Go Backley Tappy.